Oh, there it is.
Okay.
I see it. It's
All
streaming on
right.
YouTube. I
We
see
made
it.
it. Here we go.
We're good.
So welcome everyone. We are here today with Dr. Ben Fung. Dr. Ben Fung is the co-founder of UpDoc Media, and he is also the CFO of Recharge Physical Therapy based out of Maryland, correct?
That's right.
So you spend a lot of time on East Coast time, huh?
I spend a lot of time on East Coast time, and it's a warp for my West Coast persona.
Yeah. You gotta be what you call aggressive and relaxed all at the same
At the
time.
same time, yeah.
Excellent. So today we are going to be talking about marketing for patient leads and the entire patient journey. So we really want to dive in here, and the learning objectives for everybody out there is to best understand how to attract more patients, and then how to turn your patients into referrals, which is going to be your best source of new patients, or hopefully is going to be your best source of new patients over time. So Dr. Ben Fung is an expert in this field. So thanks for coming on with us today, Ben.
Thanks for having me. Always a
Awesome.
pleasure.
Yeah, absolutely. So to kick things off, let's start with the top of the line. What should practices start thinking about when they're thinking about attracting new patients from the highest level possible?
Well, from the highest level possible, regardless of size of your practice, you got to think about how people are coming to find you. You're not going to attract anybody if you're not visible. You're not going to attract anybody if you're not likable, and you're not going to attract anybody unless you give them a very clear path of, this is how I need to go to get in touch with you, to get connected, to inquire. And I think that's kind of where a lot of people go wrong is again, regardless of practice size or location or even setting, healthcare has always operated over the last couple of generations with this idea that, if we build it, they will come. Like if I'm good,
Right.
people will talk about me naturally, right? And while that is true, the problem is that now there's too many conversations happening. And the conversations are happening on many different wavelengths, channels, and platforms. And if you're not in those venues, then you'll attract no one.
Right, exactly. So what are some of the best ways that clinics can start out attracting patients?
Well, I think if we stay on this high level before we drill down, we need to think about how patients naturally shop, because it is a shopping behavior. As much as we don't like thinking about it as clinicians, as practice managers and owners, I think the more frustration you come across, the more you go, okay, yeah, this is definitely shopping. And you got to think about, what are people doing? And depending on the reference or the report or even the brand that you consult, overarchingly, everybody's going to agree that somewhere in the high 80s to even mid 90s% of patients are going to find their next provider through some type of online search. Mm-hmm. So that could be through Google. That could be through Yelp. That could be through Facebook. It could be through YouTube. It could be through Nextdoor. It could be through Google Maps. It could be through anything. But the first thing that is going to happen is they're going to search for it. And it could be as much as a query of like, physical therapy near me, or best pediatrician in the state, or this town or this city. But you have to kind of think from there. You have to think from, where are my patients naturally going to look already? And that is where I need to start building some type of a presence, and some type of a, more importantly, reputable presence, not just to be there, but to be almost immediately likable.
Right. So I'm a clinic owner, and I'm sitting here, and my bottleneck is the fact that I don't have enough patients coming in. So now I start thinking, okay, where can I get these patients? So your advice here is, the first thing to think about is, well, what are your patients doing? Where are they going to search for the next physical therapy clinic that they're going to be going to?
That's right. And, if you look at the stats, and just, it's so easy to dig into this stuff these days, because we're in this digital age where everything is here, and everything that we do is trackable in some way, for better or for worse. And what we know is that something like 88% of people, when they choose a provider, they're going to look at online reviews. Mm-hmm. And those that don't trust online reviews will look at them anyway, and it will factor into the decision. Like, some of those are fake, but I'm still going to read them. Mm-hmm. So really, as the first thing, and even just backtracking to make sure that you have all your bases covered, is you have to make sure that, again, you're discoverable. So are you properly listed and cited on all of these business listings that are out there? And you just need to cover the top 4 to 6, really. So we're talking like Google My Business / Google Places. You have to do Yelp, you have to do Facebook. It'd be good for you to be on, the platforms in your area that matter. So it could be Bing Local, it could be Yahoo Local, it could be Foursquare, it could be any number of these things. But you need to be where people are looking for you. And it's pretty regional is what we've seen. Certain areas, it's almost all Google. Other areas is all Yelp, and it's like, it just really depends on that culture of the area where you are. Like San Diego has some really weird Yelp pockets, we're here together. And it's just like, oh, that's interesting. Other places, they don't care. And by being there, you're going to be discoverable. And then you have to really think about, are patients saying good things about me? Because like you said, hopefully our current and past patients will be our best referral sources. And so if they're not saying anything about how their experience was, then that calls into question if I should even go down this rabbit hole as a consumer. Like, okay, well, you were referred, but how come you only have 3 reviews from like 2 or 3 years ago? Mm-hmm. I'm not sure I want to really, dig deeper into the 50 different tabs I have opened. I only have so much time. I need to choose something now.
Yeah, and that's an important point. So now, what is this consumer thinking about? So they're coming online, they're doing a search. How are they making their decision? What are they telling themselves when they are, let's say, starting on their journey to find the next provider?
Well, it's interesting that you mentioned that, what's in their heads, because so often I feel as clinicians, and especially as clinical owners, we're so obsessed with what we think about ourselves or how other clinicians think about us, right? Like we're the experts, we're reputable, we have all the credentials and the experience and all these like fancy clinical terms. The consumers don't care. Most consumers, when you look at consumer surveys, they care about distance. They care about online reputation. They care mostly about the phrase or the term has been labeled as congeniality. Like, are you somebody I can connect with? Do you have personality? Are you going to give me the time of day? Is this going to be a 4-minute visit or a 40-minute session? And that's really cared about, more so than I think we give it credit for, more so than I think even these surveys have really nailed down. Because for so long, healthcare consumers were put in a position where they're almost like victims to the circumstance, right? Like we've all been there, like in an urgent care, and like I'm afraid to leave the room because I'm supposed to stay here until I'm dismissed, right? And if I leave the room, I might lose my spot, right? They might cancel my X-ray, like all these thoughts come in as a consumer, and that same level of trepidation and fear is there online. And what you need to do for them, these consumers are looking for these little barriers to be removed. They want to know that you are a brand that's approachable. You're a brand that's accessible. You're a brand that is close. And if not close, provides a superior experience. I forget the exact percentages, but it was well over 50% of healthcare consumers are willing to drive further for a better patient experience. So it's not just location.
So now if there's a clinic owner who, again, is like starting to think about marketing and looking for new patients, should they start with a research step, a local research step, a national research step, or should they just start really diving into tactical work?
I would say a little bit of both. There's some basic tactical work that works no matter the location, right? Like, Google is the number one thing I point everybody to. And surprisingly enough, there is still a huge lacking, especially in the rehab therapy space, of physical therapy practices that are even listed online, right? They're still operating under the working assumption that, hey, people know that we're here, our referrals are strong, and so on and so forth, until they're not. So really, if you don't have those bases covered, figure out those tactical steps first. Get your online business listings, done. Make sure at the very least Google and Yelp are covered, even though I would really recommend you look into Google, less so Yelp. It's just not as friendly to healthcare. And once those basic steps are done, and there's actually whole listings that we think we put on the UpDoc blog somewhere, then you can go into strategy, right? Then that's when you want to take a good strategic look at, okay, in my region and in my state, and not so much national unless you have a national brand. What are people doing? How are people actually going through this discovery journey? How are they finding? How are they becoming attracted? And how they ultimately convert to that first phone call or the online schedule requester that says, okay, I'm going to come in. When you finally do that research, you can break it down. And that's when it can get like that blend of granular tactical over strategy of, what are the various buyer personas doing? What is the mom of 45 doing? What is What about the young professional that doesn't have time except for 7 a.m. or 7 p.m. doing? What are the Medicare patients doing? And then going down those lines each way. But you want to make sure that tactically you're sound before you go into like the super high level strategy, because if you don't have a leg to stand on, you're going to find yourself going back to building that foundation first.
Right, exactly. And I think a very important point for practice owners to think about is when they are describing their services, describe the benefits as opposed to the features.
Mm-hmm.
So what is meant by that is when you're describing your service, don't describe it as orthopedic certified specialist. Describe it as the best person to fix your shoulder or whatever it might be there.
Yeah, that narrative is so important because we're so focused. It's this weird culture we have internally in physical therapy, especially, is we're so obsessed with like how we call ourselves and how we identify that we forget to identify ourselves in a way that's relatable to the consumer. And you're absolutely right. Like I don't need to be some like fellowship trained clinician as much as I need to be, I'm going to be the caring individual next to you for the next X amount of weeks or whatever it might be for your shoulder surgery, and that is that's a key thing that you want to put in there, and you want to do some crossbreeding in that as well, especially when it comes to some of the more common surgeries or the common diagnoses. Is those keywords people will Google, so total hip replacement, like that kind of stuff. You want to put that in your service listings. You want to put that all over your website. You want to be exact because that's what is exactly being searched for.
So now when we're talking about showing up in Google range for terms like total hip replacement, things like that, when Google is looking at those terms, are they looking at them on a local level, or are they going to show, let's say, a nationally ranked article on hip replacements before they show a local vendor?
That's going to really depend on your, let's call it the global SEO strategy.
Okay.
So, search engine optimization has really become a whole different thing. And I feel like I'm learning about something new every minute now with SEO.
Yeah, sure.
It used to be so simple, right? It used to be Google and all the universe of web crawlers would go in and index, crossover, marry with each other, and then kind of generally agree, here are your important returns. Now it's so complicated because we have all these online business listings and there's a lot of personalized search returns, not to mention all the paid ads that you can get out there. So while you're going to be outranked by some national brand or some viral blog out there or some post from WebMD, you're definitely going to show up on the local listing side, especially if the person's a mobile user, because Google does that differently, mobile versus desktop, as well as if you're searching for it on Google Maps or anything else of that nature. So you are going to show up against some national brands or some national footprints, but the local vendors and companies will definitely show up because that's what everybody's looking for. And Google and all the other online business listing services have a vested interest to make sure that the users can see it. So just because you're new or you've been around a while or you're small compared to some national brand doesn't mean you're going to be outcompeted every way. And the same goes for paid advertisements. You may not have a multi-million-dollar advertising budget. You may only be able to spend $100 a month, but you'll still be able to win out in certain respect based on what you target for and how you play that narrative. These ad platforms are so wonderfully complex these days that you don't have to bid only one thing anymore. There's ways to be able to win even on a small budget.
So what have you seen are the most common mistakes that smaller clinics, private practices make when it comes to trying to increase their patient load?
I think the first thing they do is they try to do it themselves, and I'll throw it right now. I have a vested interest in that statement because I run a marketing agency. Right. But at the same time, it's kind of like, we probably say this to our patients too, right? The first thing that they do on a mistake for chronic pain is they try to do it themselves. I'm going to Google chronic low back pain. I'm going to try to figure out for myself before I dip into my deductibles and come into clinic. And that's the same first mistake. I was on another webinar for private practitioners, and the 4 most dangerous words that I shared that owners and managers will say to themselves is, I can do it, right? SEO, I can do it. Online reviews, I can do it. Website, I can do it. Blog, I can do it. Facebook ads, I can do it. So I find that what ends up happening, the big mistake is they're going to try it. They're going to buy some webinar, from like a brand agnostic or industry agnostic thing because it's there, and which means it's very difficult to transplant that specifically to healthcare, specifically to discipline. And they'll try it and they'll burn a couple $100s on ads and nothing will happen. And then they'll be on this mindset that, it just doesn't work, when it really works really, really well.
Right.
The second thing that I think that mistake is done is they forget to look at their current patient load and their past patients. That is the most valuable resource that you have, especially if you're an incumbent practice. Like if you're a new practice, you're starting from kind of a difficult place because you don't have a patient load or case or history that you can dig into. But if you've been in practice for 3 to 5 years and you should be collecting everybody's name and email, that's a great, wonderful resource there that you can immediately tap into, whether it's for referrals or online reviews or testimonials or all of the above, because those are direct contact points that you can touch.
Yeah, and it's interesting that you describe, hey, you might want to reconsider trying to do it yourself, because you can liken that to trying to build your own EMR. Like, yeah, could you get that done? Of course, but the amount of resources that will take you to become proficient at it and build a great EMR or whatever it might be are significantly more than it would take to, let's say, get like a web PT or to just purchase a subscription-based EMR that has taken all of the resources and made it so that they can provide this specific service at scale. And that's the same thing that you're describing there. It's the same thing with marketing. And what's funny is that marketing is the number one function for every business, because it's the driver. It's the thing that gets the patient to the door. It's the thing that allows you to generate that revenue. And another thing that's interesting is, as PTs, when we talk about revenue and these terms, profit, whatever, there's a stigma behind it sometimes. But the truth is that if we're not generating revenue, we cannot help as many people, because then you can't leverage your time and you can't build something that's going to be special for your clients.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So first mistake is they try to do it on their own. Now, I'm 100% confident that the majority of people out there are still going to try to do it on their own. So when they are trying to do it, where do you see them run into the most hiccups and bottlenecks in their own tactical work?
Let's identify 2 primary things.
Sure.
Number 1, set and forget mindsets. So set and forget. And then number 2 is thinking too complex. So more likely than not, if you're going to try to do it on your own, and honestly, if you have the capability and you have the time and the inclination to go through frustrating late hours of the night, and I feel like most business owners are, because otherwise, why would you be a business owner? Right. If you're going to do it, number 1, if you're going to go down the push route, you're trying to get a message out there, you're trying to spend some advertising dollars or throw some stuff on social media or whatever. The big problem I see there is set and forget. You'll set some budget, you'll set some ads, and you just kind of leave it and go, and you just hope it works, and you don't track it meaningfully. You don't set up systems or loops in place to reconcile how many people actually saw you and how many of those people came into the clinic, or at the very least called the clinic, or opted in for like a clinical quiz, newsletter, FAQ, ebook, whatever you want to call it. So number 1 is set and forget. Number 2 is you think way too complex. Honestly, like, you don't need to build like an 8-step logic feedback loop on, say, Infusionsoft to get online reviews or to get referrals from your past patients. It can really simply be as you shove it all into a premium hardware. Like, I don't have any vested interest in this one, but say you throw it in MailChimp, right? It's free up until like 2,000 or something like that subscribers. They'll lock out every other feature, but you can just e-blast like your, say, 1,000 people in your newsletter, because that's when you started collecting people, their contact information, and say, hey, hope you're doing well.
Hey,
we could use a favor. It can be that simple. And it sounds silly, but guess what? We spend a lot of time with our patients, especially in therapies. And they really like us. There's an old classic stat that I forgot the exact number, but it was like the percentage of PT sued in medical malpractices is like so flipping low. And like when we could get targeted for things that we do wrong, because we're not perfect, nobody cares about it. Well, A, we don't have the money, but B, people like us. Yeah. So, it could be as simple as just blasting out a, hey, hope you've been well. Let me know if you need anything, and we really appreciate it if you can share our name with friends and family members that might need us, right? That's gotta be step 1. And then step 2 is, if you want to take the gamble, and you're very welcome to, it's a good gamble to hedge, is just send them a, hey, quick favor, would you mind sharing an online review or your experience through writing an online review with how we were with you, just so that we can help people that need us find us, just like you found us. Simple stuff. You don't have to go through like a if then that, 50 different steps, segment down different things to start. Like that's what you pay a marketer for eventually.
Right.
But it could be as simple as that.
Yeah, and I think a great place to start is you finish a visit, you're doing your discharge, and you say, Joanne, I'm so happy that you got better. It would mean the world to me if you can leave me an online review, and get them to commit to the review in the office. Now, another mistake that happens though is they don't follow up with the person who committed to review, because they committed and then they forgot once they left the office because their kid called and they spilled the milk and now the carpet's dirty and now they're thinking about that. But they've committed to you to leave this review, which is a very powerful thing. Once you commit to something verbally, now you can follow up with that email. Hey, Joanne, so excited that you got great results with me. Here is that link to the review that I had mentioned before. Would love if you can leave that for me. It will only take you a second and would mean the world to both me and the practice, or whatever that might be. And that's a great way to leverage your in-person interactions with this person that you helped. And usually they'll be more than happy to, because
they're so happy to.
Yeah,
you help them through days, weeks, sometimes months. I love numbers, and I want to say there's a classical study in medical social psychology that said that you get a 70% increase in compliance when you get somebody to verbally commit to a plan of care. So, even just that, thank you so much. Would you be willing to write an online review? They say yes. Then you can gently nudge at them afterward.
Gentle nudge.
And you'd be surprised about how many are willing to. And so many of them are, I forgot, or I got busy, or I didn't even know I could.
Yeah, exactly. And we have to always need to remember, when we're thinking about business, we have to recognize that people are people. People have lives. They're not thinking about us more so than the amount of time that we spend with them, and then they're gone. They're not going home and thinking about, oh, how wonderful my experience with Dr. Fung was today. And that thought, they know that is something that is true to them, but they're not thinking about it anymore. They're thinking about the whirlwind of their day once they leave you. So the reminders are appreciated. You're not bothering them when you remind them. They appreciate it. You need those reminders to be able to be effective.
Definitely. And that's a big fear I keep hearing is a lot of practices are so tenuous about email marketing or direct contact marketing, as a lot of people like to put it, because there's SMS and there's WhatsApp and Facebook Messenger and all these different things. But it's a direct, reach out versus me putting it on somewhere for you to eventually find. But, it's not a bother if it was already agreed to. And it's definitely not a bother if it's welcome content. I think everybody's bothered by the fact that, if I was looking for shoes in April, I'm still seeing shoe ads now, but that's a different story. That's not email, and that's not a text message. That's not an instant message. That's, that's a whole different set of technologies. But people aren't thinking about you afterward, but they are very willing to help, because most people are very appreciative of their therapy experiences. And I think getting over that fear, once you see that trickle of reviews come in, when you see that trickle of referrals come in from your brand ambassadors, that's one of the best feelings ever.
So let me ask you something. When you go on Amazon, or when you're trying to make a purchasing decision, and you see 3 reviews, do you hold any weight to that?
If it's only 3 reviews, I will look at the narrative of it. That's another good little data point for people to keep in mind, is that narrative reviews actually weigh more than just ratings. So I can see 1,000 5 stars, but if there are only 3 written reviews, I actually question if the 5 stars are real. If I only see 3 reviews and it might be at 3.5 stars, but there's 2 5 stars and 1 very angry 1 star, and then I'm going to read about it and see what they say. And imperfect review tracks are actually positive. That's a fun little thing that we have difficult times accepting as clinicians. Is that somebody saying something bad about us actually reflects well on us if there's a bunch more overwhelmingly positive written feedback.
Yeah, and a review that says something like, overall, my experience was positive. I did have to wait in the I did have to wait about 15 minutes before I was able to see Dr. Fung, but once I was able to get to him, everything was incredible. I've been to 3 physical therapists, and none of them were able to fix my shoulder, but Dr. Fung was able to fix it within 3 visits, or whatever. That negativity in the front, that helps us as readers believe that it's more genuine.
Exactly. And that's the whole thing about there's a good chunk of people that don't feel that they're, authentic reviews, or that the reviews were, garnered in an authentic way. But that narrative is what peels back against that, skepticism, which is definitely healthy. Especially like stuff we've seen on mostly in e-commerce, right? Is a lot of people are sending free products out there to solicit reviews when they weren't actually bought. And so of course they're going to be inflated. Oh, I got this for free, 5 stars, no problem, right?
Yeah,
Not so in healthcare.
Okay, so you described before the mindset of a clinician where they may have, these different thoughts about email marketing. What are some other mindsets that you find that are preventing clinicians from having as much success as they may be able to if they thought about the problem differently?
I think you touched on it a little bit already, which is thinking from the consumer's narrative. Too often we are obsessed with the credentialing or the technical side of the interventions rather than the job that needs to be done. And I love the jobs to be done framework. And for those of you who don't know, the jobs to be done framework essentially outlines a 3-dimensional piece of a unique value proposition. And I think every brand should have one, no matter how big or small. The job to be done really, for the patient is, I need to be able to pick up my son, or I need to be able to drive for more than 4 hours at a time. Yes, I'm a truck driver, or whatever the case might be. I need this problem fixed. We're usually so obsessed with how we're going to fix it, we forget to share that we even fix it. Right. So I think that's a big mindset issue, and that'll come across in social content. They'll come across in the website. They'll come across on the online business listings. It'll come across in almost everything we do. Even in the email marketing standpoint of like what we send out there, if we're trying to nurture a lead in, we'll be focused on, I'm going to give you manual therapy. I'm going to give you dry needling. I'm not going to do ultrasound. I'm not going to do traction. I'm not going to do hot pads, but I am going to do neuromuscular reeducation and therapeutic exercise. It's going to be very customized to you. As a customer, I expect it to be customized to me. Like that's a baseline. Right. So I don't need to be told that. What I need to be told is that you could do the job. Mm-hmm. And then the other 2 parts of it, which is that there's going to be some kind of associated gain and some kind of associated pain relief. The pain relief could be, you're going to fix this problem in less time. The associated gain is, not only is my shoulder problem going to go away, but you're going to also somehow magically fix my neck. So that's really that framework, is you really need to narrate it from the consumer's viewpoint of, I need the job to be done. I need some gain to be made in parallel with that. And I need some pain to be relieved. And sometimes the pain relieved and the gain made is the same thing. And that's okay. But it's just too much of a temptation for us to be like, oh yeah, because I'm a specialist in manual therapy, and this is everything that I do. I may not even know as a consumer that manual therapy is part of physical therapy. Right. I just need to know that you're going to do it. And sometimes the first barrier is, do you take my insurance? Which is a common, like internally, we talk about this all the time as clinic owners. We're like, oh, how do we answer that question? Right. It's like it's huge popular talk. They want to know yes or no. They want to know yes or no. And if no, what can be done if I even want to talk about that? Right. You'd be surprised to see how quickly even like an online listing can be, where if you just mention a couple of major payers that are being accepted and more, just, like we accept bam, 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 and more, that gets all sorts of attention and eyeballs, because, oh, great. That's the first question I have as a consumer. Do you take my insurance? Mm-hmm. Right. And if not, or if it's not listed, can I find out more about it? And then you can nurture that conversation in later, which, other people are better at. That's not my front desk, stuff isn't my forte.
Right. So let's talk about that for a second. When now you just mentioned insurance, and how can clinicians think of insurance as a marketing vehicle as opposed to an enemy?
Well, think of it as your barrier to entry, right? Let's use food and Yelp, probably because it's almost lunchtime here and I'm starving.
Yeah, great.
So, what are you doing? Like, what are you doing? Just think about you as the individual, right? If I'm hungry, I'm going to pull up, like for me, it's going to be Yelp, because for me, Yelp is food and nothing else. So I'm going to pull up Yelp. I'm going to hit whatever, category in there by distant, and by what? By $, right? That $sign is that filter I see. And so if that $sign, that distance gives me a return of results that I can see and that fits a certain style, that's how you should see yourself in terms of the insurance is, does that first filter, that first step of getting into the decision-making process pass, right? Pass, no pass. And just the fact that you list an insurance, or I work with most insurances as a provider, that is a pass. That's a very powerful marketing tool that I don't think owners like to think about, especially I feel like this new generation of owners sees insurance as a major barrier, when I really feel it's more of a facilitator than anything else. Because with all the changes in healthcare, especially in the payer world, it's now back to this Wild West. If you can be their ally in the process of even them understanding their insurance carrier, that's a huge win. They're actually entire companies based out of the out of networking segments, and their half their day is explaining out of network benefits, and then getting those people that wouldn't otherwise be covered on a normal way to come into their clinics, and many times pay more money.
Yeah. So that last sentence there is an important factor. So you were mentioning that people filter by price on Yelp, right? Mm-hmm. But there are the consumers that are looking for the $1 sign, but there's also the consumers that are only looking for the $4 or $5 signs. So you just have to decide what type of clinic you want to be, stick to your guns on that. And if you want to be the private pay clinic, sometimes it might behoove you to have $400 or $500 an hour bill rates, because that bill rate is associated with quality. Mm-hmm. If your bill rate is lower, you might get the consumer that would want to see you, but you're not charging enough, which is an interesting and kind of it's a funny way to think of things, but it's really the truth of the matter.
Yeah, it's a sales psychology. It's you see it a lot, right? Like, you get what you pay for, and then that's a reality, right? But also there's a perception of value, right? So if there's a watch out there that's $1,000, I'm going to think that it's going to be like some indestructible military watch or something, or like, so it's made from diamonds and unicorn tears, and right. It's that perception. Yeah. And whether it is or not is up to you to fulfill as the provider. Yes. And again, it's a niche thing, and not even niche. It's just market segments, just choosing your battles. You can't be all things to all people, because then you're basically nothing to everybody, right? Yep. You have to be very specific about who your customers are and tailor that. And that's another mental block I feel for us as clinicians, is we're so proud about the fact that we can do all these different things. I turn to Starbucks for this in terms of like a brand example. When Starbucks got rid of their coffee label, it was just Starbucks. Nobody thought of it as like, oh my gosh, like they don't serve coffee anymore. Like, I don't provide physical therapy anymore. Like, of course we do. But everybody also knows Starbucks is a place that I can have random business meetings. It's a place I can get free Wi-Fi, and it's a place I can get 50-cent coffee refills and work there for hours and hours. It's a place I can go to the bathroom. Right? It's a place I can grab a snack. It's not just coffee. It's tea. It's sweetened drinks. It's all sorts of different things. And that's something I think we need to remind ourselves of, is if I'm catering to specific segments and I'm forgetting to say all these other things that I do, people aren't going to think, oh, I just don't do these things. Right? They're gonna factor that in later, but you need to pass those first couple of decision-making steps first.
Right. So now we're talking about a few different things here. Now we have the overall thought of who we are as providers, and that's our brand. And that's like a long-term thing. And then we also have to think as clinicians of the short-term side, which is our marketing and our tactics. How do we attract these patients to our clinic? But talk about that. So tell us a little bit about why it's important to build a brand, and why it's important when you're thinking about investment in both time and dollars to think about your brand, and also to think about your shorter term, which is how do I attract those patients today?
So, well, let's talk about brand first, and then we'll dig into tactics, as they're related, as all things are. With brand is consistency, right? You just have to agree with that for yourself, what I'm going to be consistent about. And it's painstaking, but very much worth the effort, the investment, and the heartache. And let's go back to Starbucks. I want to say I learned about this a little while ago when I was in this like coffee, like I'm still in this coffee thing, but I really got into it where like I wanted to know the culture of coffee. I wanted to know how things were roasted, how many different brewing methods there were, what brewing method was right for me, and that kind of stuff. And I came across this little article about how Starbucks coffee is purposely burnt in a certain way. Mm-hmm. And it's burnt in a certain way because it's consistent. It's not perfect coffee by any means, and they don't pretend that it's going to be. But what they will promise you is that Pikes is going to taste the same in San Diego as it does in Texas, as it does in Disneyland, as it does in New York. That consistency is brand. And I'm not telling you to be like purposely flawed, as a clinical provider. Like, yeah, every single time I try to do external range of motion, I just give them a little pop in the shoulder. Like, not like that. I'm not saying that
every time, so I'm consistent.
Yeah,
Easy.
But I am saying that like your front desk as a received call should be consistent. As people are welcome to the back, should be consistent. As you portray yourself online, should be consistent. The colors, the narrative. I mean, that's actually pushing through to some of the tactics where we're seeing a fall off in conversions when something on the website is different than the ads, that's different than the reviews, that's different than things on social, that's different than when they come in person, because all of a sudden they're like, I was promised this idea, but then when I came in person, it was very different. And wasn't what I saw or expected. And then those are the patients that typically fall off. So investing in that brand of how your customers experience you and regard you. I love the idea of brand identity versus brand image. Brand identity being what you think you are, and brand image is what your customers imagine you to be. And you want to get them as close together as possible for a successful brand. And that is what actually cultivates ultimately the tactical success of getting referrals, both let's call it both direct and discovery, since Google likes to use those terms, right? So you get direct referrals from people that have known you or known about you or have experienced you or currently experience you. And then you get the ones that discover you and then kind of latch themselves onto the brand and then decide to come in. So with the direct ones, those are pretty simple. They've already experienced you. There's that another statistic out there where somebody, if you were to refer something, you're that much more likely to buy that, even when you see better options, right? Mm-hmm. So that's going to be promised that it is. But how do you convey that to somebody who's experiencing you new for the first time? And a lot of that is going to be showing that consistency, because people shop in a snapshot in time, right? People don't follow you on your Instagram feed for 6 weeks and go, okay, now it's something, I should probably do something about my back pain now. Mm-hmm. Right? What they're going to do is they're going to do the same thing everyone else does. They're going to look on your website, and if they feel also compelled to go outside of the website, say to your Facebook feed or your Instagram feed, they're going to scroll as fast as they can until it's like subliminal imaging for themselves. They're like, blah, 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 blah. Okay, it looks generally the same, and it looks like most of their patients are happy, so I'm going to go ahead and give them a call.
Yeah, and
that's the consistency that we're talking about. They're not going to, analyze things like, oh my gosh, I can't believe everything was posted at Tuesday at 8 a.m. every week. They're not going to care about that. Right. But they are going to care about the reviews online that they're going to read, because they read it, is going to match your service description that you put on your website, and it's going to match the impressions that they feel, the images that they see, on secondary platforms, should they choose to go there.
Yep, and if you want to learn more about the why on why this works, a great book is Crossing the Chasm. I totally forgot who the author was, but it describes the reason why you'll have specific people who will be your early adopters, and then there's another market segment that is only going to really come and see you because of word of mouth. So great book, Crossing the Chasm. Now let's talk about that word of mouth part, because it is so powerful. How do we generate that word of mouth referral when we own a clinic?
So you can generate that by asking, and you can generate that through a number of, call it touch points, opportunities, both early on and further down the route, that you can ask people for these favors. During course of care is a very fantastic but tenuous time, because they're there right there. And honestly, I think it's underutilized. That in the middle, like those early wins. I've been a physical therapy patient a number of times now. That's actually what got me into the industry. Mm-hmm. And those early wins as a patient, that's something that we actually ask people to do on a client level when they're capturing raw media for us. It's actually, it's really well highlighted by a book called, I think it's called, was it Telling Your Brand Story?
That was a newer book out, yep.
But it's not the only book out there that talks about this. Honestly, I think the brand that does this the best is Pixar, and they just do it the best. Yeah. Right? They tell the hero story, right? They identify the hero. They tell about like how sucky it was to be in pain or to go through something bad, but then how awesome it is as you progress out of it, and that how awesome it is feeling is a fantastic time for you to tell your customers, hey, share this with somebody, anybody, even if it's not relevant right then, because it might be relevant later. And I think that's really underutilized. The time that I think everybody does take advantage of it is at discharge or at end of course of care, right? Like, okay, I'm feeling better. Tell it to a friend, tell your families and friends and stuff. The other time that I think that we fail to realize or feel comfortable is reaching out after courses of care at specific time points. I want to say that the most recent numbers that we've been able to corroborate is about 3 months. So 3 months after course of care is a fantastic time to ask for referrals. And sometimes those referrals are themselves. A lot of times that time is when patients go, you know what, my shoulder isn't 100% yet. Like I thought it was, I was really happy about it, but I could use a quote tune-up, as much as that might not be a popular term in our industry internally. But that's a time when people are willing to come back, is at month 3 for whatever reason. It just seems to be the most salient time for folks. But that's also a great time for people to be asked to, hey, share this with family and friends. And then annual checkups are another great time. Come in for an annual injury screen, come in for annual checkup, or hey, it's been a year since you quote graduated. How are you doing? Hope you're doing well. And if you are, awesome. If you're not, tell us. And if we could beg the favor of you sharing with a family or friend that might need to know about us. Those are fantastic times. And guys, like, I think one of the things that we forget about too is that there's a good segment. They're not big, but it's a good, tiny, strong segment that I like to call brand ambassadors, that they are your champions for life, that you really change their lives in a transformative way. And those are the ones that will be willing to talk to you and about you forever. And those people are ones that you want to keep in contact with, and bring back into the clinic and take with you to places if possible, and to do micro documentaries on them. It doesn't have to be professionally done. It could be high school AV club style. I don't even know if they have that anymore, since everybody is already doing AV on their phones, right? but that's what I mean by, like, anyone and everyone should be generally a candidate for you to consider asking a referral for.
Yep.
And it's a matter of how you ask and when you ask.
Yeah, I think a great point on that annual checkup thing. I continuously am getting text messages from my dentist because they're telling me, and they do the 6 month, they're saying you're due for your checkup, which is a great reminder for me. I always forget about these things, and eventually I will respond to this text message, go back to the dentist. But right, so it's important that they continue to remind me that I need to come back so that I can have good teeth health. But we don't do that as clinicians, as physical therapists as much. We always think like, oh no, the patient needs to come visit us only when they have a problem.
Yeah.
And that for our brand is a problem in itself, because as we all know, there's so much more than that, and prevention is the key to everything. Making people healthier to begin with is really a major function of our profession that we don't fulfill on a large enough scale. So asking for that annual checkup is huge. Now, if I'm a clinic owner and I'm kind of new to all this, I'm thinking, man, I have 100 patients. How am I supposed to plan all this outreach and organize myself to know when it's 3 months from the last checkup for someone? So what are some things that the clinic can do there, and what mediums of outreach should they be using?
Well, I would use the most direct ones possible. I think email is probably going to be around forever. I don't think it's ever going to go away. It's being used for government services too frequently for it to truly go away. But I would say the top 2, if you had to choose, would be email and then some type of direct messaging platform. Different places will have different biases, but more likely than not, if you're in the United States, SMS will be the way to go. So you're going to want to do text messaging. And how you do this is you automate it. And now don't confuse automation with automatic. It's not going to automatically just do magics for you. You have to think through the sequence and the logic of it, which means you're going to have to put yourself in the place of a kind of an engineer. And let's just use MailChimp again, just because it's there, it's accessible, a lot of people know it. It has one of the better open rates and continual readership rates, because it looks familiar to a lot of people. It's like your general mom and pop look templates for most of the people that use it. There's other platforms for stuff that's more granular, but let's just talk about free, because a lot of, why not if it's free? So for something like MailChimp or any other they call them email CRMs these days, but any kind of email automation platform, you can very simply create a sequence. Upon discharge, you put in the patient's name and email, And you can go by discharge date too. But what you do is you create a sequence and it'll tell you, okay, I'll send them immediately. Thank you for coming. Would you write us a review, right? 3 months. How have you been? Please share it to a friend. At 6 months, hey, it's been half a year. Are you still good? Any problem areas? At 1 year, hey, it's been a year. Congratulations. Hope you've been well. Why don't you reply and let us know how you're doing? And you can do that for 24 months and even 36 months. And just let it fly. It doesn't, I mean, there's ways to optimize that. But if you're a clinic owner and you're doing a lot of things yourself and you don't have the time to really plan all these different logic loops out, that's a linear plan that's very simple at discharge 3, 6, 12, 24, and 36 months. And it can, you can see it in there, different types of copywriting where it could be just, hey, just checking on you, to, hey, write us a review. And you can choose for yourself how you want to do that. You can say at 3 months, how are you? And at 6 months, write us a review. Doesn't really matter. It's just on you how you want to do that. And you can do the same thing with a text message marketing tool. And there's a lot of brands out there, and you can integrate them with something like MailChimp or any other email marketing platform where it kind of coincides, or you can just bet on one or the other. We see that text messaging doesn't have the best when it comes to actual written reviews, but it's also the most visible, right? People it bugs everybody. I don't know anybody that's not bugged by that little one that's above my text messaging icon, right? So I'm gonna open it. I'm gonna leave it, but I'm eventually gonna open it because it's gonna annoy me. So the open rate is practically 100%, which means it won't be ignored. But it doesn't necessarily mean you'll take action, but at least I'll be reminded of it. And so if you had to, you can maybe save that for just the annuals and maybe like happy birthday text, that kind of stuff. So that's one very, simple way of creating it. There's all sorts of YouTube videos out there that can walk you through that process. And it's effective. It's almost too silly effective not to do. Doing it optimally, that's another story. But at the very least, get a linear sequence down that, upon discharge, you'll have your front desk team just input that or export from your EMR and upload it, or you can upload it once a week. If you have a larger practice with a lot more patients, and you can even upload by date. That's a feature for most email marketing tools. They'll say, for a birthday or a date specific column, and you can say date of discharge, right? And it triggers by the date of discharge, immediately after or close as possible to 3 months, 6 months, 12, 24, 36.
Yeah. And the best point that you had there is keep it simple, especially in the beginning. Because if you're a clinic and you have like 40 patients and you increase your open rate from 5 to 10%, it's not going to do anything for you. So in the beginnings, you really just want to get focused on getting started, getting something in place. And then the other side of it is a lot of people, and it may not have to even be clinic owners, but people just trying to start businesses in general. They're thinking like, man, I got to be perfect before I do anything. And then that prevents them from taking any action. But if you don't take an action, then you don't have a baseline to measure against, and then you can never improve. So you really don't know if you start out with some super complex flow like Ben was describing before, you don't know if that's better or worse than anything because you don't have a baseline. So the best idea is always to get started so you can get your baseline and then you can test against it. Because maybe at the end of the day, the 3, 6, 12, 24, 36 is the most optimal chain of events. But you won't know that until you start somewhere and have a baseline to measure against. So that's great stuff. And then the other thing that you were describing there was just ask. Asking is the same thing. It's like getting started. The majority of people just don't ask. And that's like sales 101. When people get to like the end of a sales call, or in our terms, it would be for if you're talking to a prospective patient, they won't ask them to come in or schedule the visit. They'll just answer the questions and, oh, okay, have a nice day.
Yeah.
Okay, so I've answered your questions today. Now, would you like me to get you scheduled for Monday, or should I schedule for Tuesday? Very easy, and you'll increase the amount of patients that you have coming in the door by just simply asking the question like, hey, do you want to become a patient of mine?
And that's actually a good good parallel to the whole referral marketing mission. Is every phone call is a potential referral. They're either referring themselves or somebody else. And one thing that I find that a lot of practices aren't doing right is when they answer the call, they don't grab any contact information or context. It's really just answering questions. Like you become a knowledge bank and you let the patient or the caller take control of the call. And it's one of those fine lines. I remember a marketing professor saying it this way: all marketing should be customer driven, but not customer directed.
Right.
And so when you have these phone calls, you should be asking, hey, real quick, Brett, great. Brett, hey, just in case we get disconnected and just in case I need to send you some more information, could I get a good callback number? Bam. Could I get a good email just in case I need to send like insurance information for that? Bam. You have those two things. Now you have a lead, right? A lead means a person and a way of contacting them or getting connected. And at the end of that too, I'd say that, I don't want to schedule anything. Well, hey, would it be okay if I just sent you a little reminder email and some FAQ packets? Like I think is really helpful. We've had a lot of people to give us good feedback on it that, it helps them with the exact kind of situation that you're up against, ankle sprain or whatever. And then you can send them that out there. And that becomes its own referral source, because even if they don't come in, it could be that 6 months down the line, you're hitting them with your company newsletter and it's a blog on ankle sprain. And they go, oh my gosh, my buddy Jimmy just sprained his ankle playing Ultimate. I'm going to forward that email. Yes. Right. And so you want to be able to capture as much of those direct contacts as possible and not feel discouraged that, oh my gosh, I didn't land that sales call. No, what you're trying to do is build that brand. And that brand is more than just what happens now. So much of it happens down the road.
Mm-hmm. And that's important. And it goes back into your consistency discussion before and everything, but you always want to be nice to people and you always want them to have a good experience of whatever that interaction with you was. I heard a quote from Ronald Reagan the other day, and he was talking about when he was running for presidency. And what he said was, he's like, I love going to events because every hand that I shake, I know that that's 10 votes, for the next presidency, or 10 or 100 votes for the next presidency. Yeah. Because people are going to talk about their experience.
Ronald Reagan shook my hand. I shook his hand,
And that message will spread. And that's the same thing with the referral business too. You have one person and then they're talking to their friend. Oh, I hurt my ankle. Oh, you got to go to Dr. Fong. It was incredible. I had an awesome experience there. And then that's easy for your friend to make that decision. It's like, oh, okay, this is the only thing. Yeah, I'm just going to go.
I'm going to look. Oh yeah. Bunch of 5-star reviews. Fantastic. I'm going to call the number right there.
Yeah, so I want to get to one more point. We really don't have too much time here, but you were just talking about it. It's turning those leads into customers. Let's just talk about that real quick. What are some things people can do to, once they collect that information, or where should they be thinking when they get a lead that maybe it comes through a Google ad? How do they get them to become now a client?
Without getting into too much detail, because we don't have that much time left, think about what's common is most common. It's so easy to go down this rabbit hole. I gotta be so specific about every little lead that comes through, and they should all be equally important to you, but you should also play the law of large numbers. When you get a contact, right, and say they didn't want to give you as much detail as you could use, what you really want to do is you want to throw them down a direct connection cycle, whether it's through email or through SMS or what have you, and you want to tell them thank you. Right, first off, thank you for calling. Thank you for opting in. Thank you for taking a look at our website. Thank you for just being part of our community, because just the fact that you've even been in contact with us, we feel the responsibility of taking you in as part of our community. Thank you. Secondly, you want to start throwing out positive pieces of information, helpful pieces, very unsalesy if possible. Just health tips. It could be, hey, it's flu season, and you don't have to be a flu clinic to talk about flu season, right? Like nutrition. You don't have to be a dietitian clinic to talk about nutrition. You want to talk about general interests and general problems and how we can be as people more aware of our own health and take more control of that. And then as you go down that route of sending this kind of information out, every 4 or 5 emails, then you can actually send out there something about, hey, do you have any needs? Simple as that. And that's how you start to nurture that. And a lot of people are shy about replying to that, but they will open those emails. And most of these platforms will tell you, oh, here are your openers, or here are your clickers. And then you can directly reach out to them going, hey, I noticed that you read that one foot article, foot pain article. Is there any kind of foot pain that you might be having? Would you like to, schedule a free phone consultation? It's just 10 minutes. One of our licensed clinicians will get in contact with you and just talk to you about your situation. We also have a free 20-minute injury screen if you'd like to come in. So that's how you kind of nurture folks in, is you have to give them some kind of valuable information or valuable connection first. Nobody wants to be sold to on this like cold call or cold email. Think about your, the local mall and the food court, right? Where do a lot of people line up? Wherever there's samples. So you got to give them pieces of that orange chicken first before you ask them to, line up and order, like a 2-item combo. So give them those little pieces of information that is genuinely helpful, that come from, a good heart place of giving. And before you go, hey, why don't you come in and spend some dollars? And even then, you don't even have to ask it that way. You can just say, is there any questions that I can answer? And naturally, people will turn themselves into leads if you go down that nurturing route. There's no need to hard sell patients on that because we're a little too intelligent for that nowadays with everything open on the internet.
Yeah, and as healthcare professionals, it's so much more important for us to develop trust first, because people are trusting you with their health, they're trusting you with their bodies,
their lives. Yeah.
So super important there. As always, Ben, thanks so much for jumping on with me today. Where can people find you if they wanted to get in touch?
So you can find me on updocmedia.com. That's UPDOC, like what's up doc, media.com. All of my handles, whether it's, Instagram, Snapchat, Facebook, all that, it's all at Dr. Ben Fung. That's DRBENFUNG. And if you feel like it, you can email me, Ben at updocmedia.com, or even send me a text at 470-BEN Fung. And that goes right here. And I'll get it.
To the device. What did Elon Musk say? We're basically already symbiotic with our devices already.
Yeah, it just might as well be implanted in the back of my head. Yeah. But and you'll almost everybody will tell you if they've ever blindly contacted me that I respond a lot faster than you'd expect because I'm just me.
Me. That's the way to do it.
I'm just me, and just here to help whoever you are.
Yeah, and he's genuine with that. I can attest to it for sure, 100%. Again, thanks so much, Ben, and talk to you soon.
See ya. Bam. Thank you.
I don't know how to turn this thing off, so I'm just going to shut it down.
just unplug it.
I'm unplugging everything. Later.
See ya. Thanks, guys.